This is my sound isolation booth for singing practice. As some of you may have already noticed, I have sound treatment panels outside of the booth and not inside. Is it a new discovery in soundproofing? Am I simply insane? Or is there any other reason? Watch this video till the end to find out. I'll show you how I built this booth without any prior handyman or carpenter's experience, in Switzerland in 2024, on a budget. Switzerland is well known as one of the most expensive countries in the world. However, this project was surprisingly affordable, and it cost me less than most of the other similar projects that I watched on YouTube. In the following, I will provide the cost estimation, a list of used materials, and will perform a series of sound check with sound attenuation in decibels. Day 1. I'm starting with the floor. The panels that you see on the screen are called OSB, or Oriented Strand Board, something that I learned starting this project. I follow the general plan of almost all other DIY isolation booth builders. I build a wooden frame, fill it with rock wool and sandwich it between two OSB boards. One of the major differences to other builders is that I'm not using drywall. There are a couple of reasons. In the hardware store called Jumbo, where I bought all of the materials, drywall was more expensive than OSB. Also, that would require me to learn a new technology of dealing with drywall, in addition to the technology of dealing with OSB. OSB is load-bearing, so I can use thinner studs. Also, OSB has decent mass, so one sheet of 2 meters by 65 centimeters by 15 millimeters weighs about 10 kilograms. And as I learned from other vocal booth builders, the most important in sound isolation is mass and interfaces between different materials. The blue material you see on the screen is a 2 mm thin plastic step impact insulation, which is normally used for heated floors. I'm putting it here to mechanically decouple the frame from the OSB board with the hope to reduce sound propagation between rigid parts. I'm using 24 mm by 48 mm studs, which would correspond to 1 by 2 inches. Most of the other isolation booth builders use 2 by 4 studs, which are basically twice as big as the stud I'm using in every dimension. I guess it's because 2 by 4 studs are readily available in North America. As a result, many other vocal booths are extremely sturdy and look more like a fallout shelter. I don't plan to sit out an earthquake in my booth, so for my purposes, my booth is also very sturdy. For instance, I can lean on a wall without problem, and the ceiling holds in place. Actually, as you will see, the floor and the ceiling hold the walls, as if in a cage, which adds sturdiness. My main goal with this build is to have as much soundproofing as possible. We live in an apartment block, and loud singing can get above 100 decibels, which can definitely disturb our neighbors. Now I'm building the long wall with the same technique as the floor, so it's a wooden frame sandwiched between two OSB boards with rock wool inside. A few words about the materials and tools. First of all, I was almost always choosing the cheapest option. Mostly because I don't necessarily believe that more expensive and specialized items can have necessarily better quality. Also as an experiment of how low my cost can be in such a country which is perceived as very expensive. I ordered 45 wooden studs, 10% more than needed by my calculations. And indeed, at the very end, I had about 8 studs left. Each of them costs 1.8 Swiss francs. 1 Swiss franc is approximately equal to 1 euro and about 20% more expensive than $1 US. So, for instance, To know the cost in dollars, just simply add 20% to all the prices that I'm showing you. I also ordered 2 packs of rock wool isolation, 40mm thick, 27 Swiss francs a piece. The floor impact installation was about 31 Swiss francs per roll. The main expense were the 19 OSB boards, 11 francs a piece. There are also 2 cartridge guns, extremely cheap, less than 3 francs a piece, but they work like a charm. Delivery cost me 65 Swiss francs, so the total for this delivery is 444 Swiss francs. I also bought 2 cartridges of glue, from which I haven't used up even one, and 2 cartridges of silicone sealant, from which one was used up completely. I was not using any specifically designed soundproofing products, such as green glue or acoustic sealant. However, spoiler alert, I'm very satisfied with my final build and its soundproofing qualities. I was also buying the cheapest tools, as I will probably not use them again in the foreseeable future. Here is an example of tools and materials I bought at Aldi. The saw was only 8 francs, the box of screws was 4 francs, a pack of 12 L-shaped connectors, 4 francs, a couple of door hinges, 4 francs. The other tools and materials were comparably cheap, so I would estimate my total cost as less than 600 Swiss francs. This is 5 to 20 times cheaper than commercially available isolation booths. Here are my plans and blueprints. Now back to the build. A major design decision is to build so that the booth can be disassembled in case we decide to move. That's why my booth is made of 7 parts, which can be relatively easily taken apart. The floor, the ceiling, 2 side walls, the back wall, the door frame, the door. Initially, I was planning to use only a hand saw, so that's why I planned the dimensions of my booth with respect to the sizes of the OSB plates, so that I can saw as little as possible. For instance, the dimensions of the side wall correspond to the dimensions of 2 OSB boards put side by side. However, on day 1, my neighbor heard me sawing with a handsaw and offered me a jigsaw, which was extremely helpful of him. I think everybody doing such a construction project should use at least 3 power tools: a jigsaw or a circular saw, an electric screwdriver, and an electric drill. It's very convenient to have the drill separate from the screwdriver, so that you don't have to constantly switch the drill bit to the screwdriver bits. If you don't own power tools, usually you can rent them at the local hardware store. Another major design decision is that I opted to build without a window. A window would definitely add a lot to the difficulty and cost of the project. And actually, I prefer a booth without a window, so that I can completely forget about the environment and concentrate on my music. I opted to build without a ventilation system, at least for now. A ventilation system would definitely add to the complexity and cost of the project, but most importantly, it would seriously degrade the soundproofing qualities. It poses, however, concerns of comfort and safety, namely depletion of oxygen, increase in temperature and humidity. According to my calculations, an adult can survive on the air in the booth for 10 to 12 hours. However, do your own research. I'm not responsible if you build such a booth and then your landlord finds you there a few months later because you haven't been paying your rent. The temperature and humidity increase, of course, but not dramatically. I can sit in the booth for at least 30 minutes before I start noticing slight discomfort. Normally I don't do voiceovers there, only singing practice, which means I can easily air out the booth every 10 minutes or so. I've been using this booth for a few weeks now, and for me, absence of ventilation is not a problem. Later, you'll see temperature and humidity readings before and after a session. Now it's time to assemble the floor and 3 walls. The floor weighs around 30 kilograms, 2 long walls weigh around 70 kilograms each, and the short wall weighs around 40 kilograms. I use small metal L-shaped connectors to connect the walls. The first stage of the build is over. The booth stands on a vinyl mat which was left from my door soundproofing project. This patch of the mat should cost around 25 Swiss francs. As you see, I was not very accurate with cutting the boards, so there are gaps ranging from 1 millimeter up to a centimeter so that my pinky can fit. Here you see the light shining through those gaps. Now it's time to plant the door. Such gaps are completely unacceptable there, as the door will jam. I changed my approach to sewing and started using a guiding rail for the jigsaw. Building a door frame and the door was considerably more difficult than what I did before. It cost me more time than building all the other walls, the floor and the ceiling combined. So why didn't I buy a ready-made door and a door frame? A ready-made door with the door frame would cost at least 200 to 300 Swiss francs, which would considerably increase my budget. Also, those doors are usually bigger than the one I'm building, which means I'd have to build a larger booth to accommodate it. I'd also had to spend more time soundproofing this door. I've seen a couple of YouTube videos where people install commercially bought doors into their booth without any additional soundproofing. That's something I could not understand. It seems to me that your soundproofing is as good as your weakest link, which is the door at this case. However, even with the additional accuracy, door building was extremely challenging, and I'm still not fully satisfied with the end result. By the way, I would appreciate if you like and subscribe. At the time of posting this video, my channel is very small, with only 24 subscribers. And if you like and subscribe, this will signal the YouTube algorithms to show my content to more people. Thank you. Now it's time to attach the door frame and the door. I screwed the hinges to horizontal bars inside the door and the door frame. These bars were positioned symmetrically, separating the door into 3 equal areas. It was a mistake, as the door now warps under its own weight and the top part doesn't come fully into the door frame. I should have located the hinges like on regular doors, closer to the top and the bottom.
Tata, what's on the map?
The ceiling is the last part in the construction. It's similar to a lid, with its inside insulation part fitting in between the walls. Putting the ceiling in place. Even though I was working with higher precision, there are still big gaps between the walls, due to the warping of the wood under its own weight. The weight of the door frame is 17 kilograms and the weight of the door is 27 kilograms. Now it's time for the first sound check with the beeper, with all those gaps. Attention! It will be loud. The beeper's volume up close is 95 decibels. At a distance of 1 meter it's 85 decibels, and with the door closed 75 decibels. Which corresponds to the volume reduction of 10 to 20 decibels. Now it's time to close all gaps and repeat the test. Here I'm putting the blue plastic insulation into all gaps. By the way, the door was warping so badly that I had to install additional hinges at the very top and very bottom. I used the vinyl mat for door padding. Now I'm sealing the seams between panels with silicone sealant. I'm installing a latch on top of the door, because the door still warps outside, and without the latch, it would not close tightly. Now, all gaps seem to be closed, and it's time for the second sound check. It will be loud. The volume of the beeper is 95 decibels up close, 85 decibels at 1 meter distance, and 58 decibels with the door closed, which corresponds to 27 to 37 decibels reduction, which is about 20 decibels better than when it was with the gaps. So it proves that sealing the gaps is extremely important for soundproofing. Here I'm making the table from an IKEA shelf. It's a lucky coincidence that the shelf fits without sewing. Now it's time to properly install a monitor. I bought this TV mounting on AliExpress for 15 Swiss francs and the used computer monitor for 20 francs. Now that all gaps are sealed, let's make a temperature and humidity test. Before a session, temperature was 24.3 degrees Celsius and the humidity was 59%. Then I had a 50 minutes singing practice without opening the door. The temperature increased by 2.4 degrees Celsius and the humidity increased by 13%. It is bearable but slightly uncomfortable. Of course, it makes sense to air the booth every 10 to 15 minutes. The third stage of the build is the interior. I decided to make acoustic panels, also known as sound treatment panels, from leftover rock wool slabs. I simply seal them in plastic trash bags, so that the rock wool fibers don't escape into the air of the booth. The plastic bags had a distinct and very unpleasant smell. However, it completely aired out within a week after putting them inside the booth. I attached those bags to the walls with two-sided carpet scotch tape. The tape cost 8 Swiss francs. Now I'm drilling a hole for cables. There are only 3 cables: the power cable for the screen, the DisplayPort cable for the screen, and the USB cable for the audio interface. I'm using, by the way, Scarlett Solo Gen 1, and I'm very happy with it. Now, attaching the remaining acoustic panels to the walls. This is a landscaping fabric for the booth interior. For 8 francs I bought 10 meters, which was completely enough. First I tried to attach the fabric with the same scotch tape, but it didn't hold. Eventually I had to buy a hand tucker in Aldi for 20 francs. Making the rest of acoustic panels. While dealing with rock wool, it's recommended to have either plastic gloves or workers' gloves, because some people develop skin irritations. I actually never had any irritation from rock wool. In the beginning I was also using a respirator mask, but eventually I was too lazy to put it on. I hope, as I'm working outside, the mask is not strictly necessary. I also ordered a party lamp from AliExpress for 4 francs and a regular USB lamp for 8 francs. Finalizing the interior. The dimensions of my booth outside are 102 centimeters by 125 centimeters by 215 centimeters. The useful space inside is 78 centimeters by 101 centimeter by 190 centimeters. I have plenty of space to sit and stand inside the booth, and also to play a smaller 3/4 sized guitar. It's also possible to play a regular sized Dreadnought acoustic guitar inside, however it's not comfortable, as I keep hitting the walls and the table with the instrument. Now back to the first question of this video. Why am I putting the acoustic treatment panels on the outside? I bought those panels a couple of years ago, hoping to soundproof my room with them. At that time I didn't know that those panels don't provide any soundproofing and actually have very limited sound treatment qualities. So I'm putting them there only as a decoration. I don't really know what to do with them. The project is fully done in 31 hours, which took me about 3 weeks, working about 1.5 hours per day. As a safety feature, I ordered 2 wireless doorbells from AliExpress for 4 francs each. Here is a button which rings a bell outside, in case somebody inside the booth needs help. And here is a bell inside the booth, which is triggered by a button outside. I also bought this small USB fan for 4 francs, and it allows me to stay in the booth longer without airing it out. Now it's time for the final sound checks. The volume is 94 decibels up close, 78 decibels at 1 meter distance, and 49 decibels with the door closed, which corresponds to 35 to 45 decibels reduction. And here is a shouting test. I was not trying to be particularly musical, I tried to shout as loud as I could.
And belt out this tune's full of soul. Raise your horns into the air. There is plenty ale to share. All are welcome, take a chair and sing a song loud and strong. Man of war and man of care, maidens fearsome maidens fair. Raise your horns into the air and sing a song loud and proud and strong. Skål! Skål! Sing loud and strong. Skål! Skål! A toast and a thundering song.
The volume was 108 decibels up close, 98 decibels at 1 meter distance, and 68 decibels with door closed, which corresponds to 30 to 40 decibels reduction. To summarize, the booth ended up even better than I expected. I'm quite happy with it, and I enjoy the time I practice music there. And as I mentioned before, I would appreciate if you like and subscribe, because it will allow more people to discover my content. Thank you!